Good morning, everybody. Sabah al-khair. Welcome to the side event of the Brussels 5 conference in support of Syria and the region. The main focus in the next 2 hours will be on employment, resilience, and social cohesion. We will be presenting success stories, address challenges of labor market access for refugees and host communities. Before we begin, I would like to lay some ground rules of engagement and participation. All microphones have been turned on mute. Only the moderator can unmute, and in this case, Mena from ILO will be supporting me. Questions can be posted in the chat during the meeting. Please make sure to adhere to the time given. In case of the need to speak, please raise the hand in the Zoom option provided. Translation in English, Arabic, and Turkish will be provided, as you can see, and we will be having different interventions and guests from the floor. Allow me to begin. I'm just going to give you a short background and rationale of the meeting today. A decade has passed since the Syria conflict erupted. From that time, the world has been dealing with a multi-layered and multidimensional crisis that requires professionally tailored and highly sensitive response mechanisms, innovative and inclusive tools and programs that can, on the one hand, address and respond to the needs of refugees and host communities, deal with and hinder the drivers of conflict, such as exacerbated grievances, discrimination, mistrust, and the sense of injustice over the access to health services, decent jobs, and livelihoods. On the other hand, working in such fragile contexts and ensuring that the future of millions of young people is not left in vain, if it's of utmost importance to enable access not only to shelter and clean water, but also to better future through education and decent work. Besides, responding to the Syrian crisis also requires continuous cooperation and coordination with and between hosting countries and national and international bodies. This type of networking is key to an effective response to the different human and socio-economic ramifications of the crisis. Consequences were worsened and led to the increasing dimensions of the tragedy through the implications of the pandemic. Finally, our event today aims at providing the space for people to share their success stories that emerge by being involved in programs and projects to enable main stakeholders to exchange and draw lessons learned and point out shortcomings. Precisely, this event tries to highlight the importance of linking the resilience of individuals with job creation and sustaining a balance between the demand and supply sides of the labor market. And finally, stress how job creation and employment can ensure and strengthen social cohesion. Our first speaker, guest speaker for today is Ms. Amal Ibrahim. Amal is 19 years old from the Kurdistan region of Iraq, whose community was affected by the post-conflict financial crisis. She took part in the training on employability, entrepreneurship, life skills, and active citizenship provided by ACTED in the framework of the project funded by Unicef in Duhok City. She has been provided with support through Unicef Youth Center. She worked with the improvement of public transportation groups and developed a social initiative on assessing people's concerns about taxis. Her initiative was implemented and business cards for taxi drivers were printed. Taxi and bus stations were to be located on Google Maps with full information about their working hours, locations, phone numbers, and fees. The joint referral system that the ILO and UNICEF are putting together for young people between 18 and 24, providing learning and career pathways. Through that, Amal will be provided with additional support, including advanced ILO training on entrepreneurship using ILO's Start and Improve Your Business tool. Allow me now to switch to Arabic. صباح الخير أمل، سامعتني؟
صباح النور.
كيف
ليش ما
حالك؟
معك؟ الحمد لله زين. كيفك؟
الحمد لله، شكرا لحضورك معنا.
شكرا لك.
راح أعطيك المجال هلا تتفضلي بالحديث. عندي سؤالين، أو إذا فينا نحطهم بصيغة واحدة، اللي هي البرامج اللي اشتركتي فيها، كيف ساعدتك على انك تطوري مهاراتك وتنتجي افكار جديده تتجاوب مع المشاكل اللي المجتمع اللي انت عايشه فيه كان عم بيتعرض لها بسبب الضغوط الاقتصاديه؟ وكيف هاي البرامج ساعدت شباب تانيين من سنك ومن عمرك بانهم يلاقوا المساحه اللي ممكن من خلالها يطوروا افكار ويحولوها لمشاريع على الارض. تفضلي.
شاركت في تدريبات اللي قدموها منظمة أكتد في دهوك. التدريبات عن توظيف وريادة الأعمال والمهارات الحياتية والتي شملت 4 وحدات: تحديد الهدف وتنظيم الوقت وكتابة السيرة الذاتية ومقابلة عمل والبحث عن العمل والتوظيف والتقدم لوظيفة عبر الإنترنت. همنا علمونا كيف ما هي حقوق الموظف وكيف ما هي عقلية صاحب العمل، وقدموا لنا سيناريوهات عن المواقف اللي يمكن أن يحدث في مجال العمل. هذه الأشياء كلها خلتني أكثر كفاءة، أتحمل المسؤولية ويكون عندي أعبر عن آرائي والعمل الجماعي عندي، واحترام الاختلاف، التنوع على التنوع الاجتماعي والديني والرأي. وصار عندي خبرة في كتابة الCV، السيرة الذاتية ومقابلة عمل. همينا بسبب الظروف الاجتماعية هذه التدريبات خلتني أكثر جرأة أنه أثق بنفسي، من ناحية أنه أتكلم مع الرجال. وشاركت في أهم القضايا التي يمكن أن تؤثر على سكان دهوك. كانت 4 قضايا التي عملت عليها. كان قضية النقل العام، المواصلات. نشرنا استبيان على التواصل الاجتماعي، و300 شخص شاركوا في هذا الاستبيان، ومن خلال هذا الاستبيان تواصلنا مع عدة حلول إنه نصنع بطاقات تعريفية لسائق التاكسي، فيها أسماءهم وأرقامهم ورقم المحطة ومكان الذي يشتغلون فيه. من خلال هذه البطاقة الناس تقدر تتواصل مع السائق. واختارنا 11 محطة تاكسي في محافظة دهوك، حطيناها في خريطة جوجل مع المعلومات اللازمة: ساعات العمل ورقم المحطة. عملنا لهم لافتة أن هذه محطة تاكسي، يقدرون الناس يعرفون مكانها. أنا حالياً طالبة في كلية قسم علوم الحاسبات. عندي حلم إنه أفتح مشروعي الخاص وأدخل عالم التكنولوجيا. إذا من خلال هذه التدريبات وعملي على هذا المشروع عرفت إنه أنا قادرة إنه أفتح مشروعي وأدير مشروعي. فإذا متشوقة إنه ILO تفتح تدريبات وتدعمنا، وإذا كانت أكو هذه التدريبات والدعم الكافي الفني إنه نقدر نحقق أحلامنا ونفتح مشاريعنا على الأرض الواقع. شكرا.
شكرا أمل كثير لك. أنت لسه عندك وقت للحديث، ولكن إذا حابة تتوقفي هون ما في أي مشكلة. أنا سعيد بإني سمعت المداخلة تاعيتك. سعيد انه نشوف اشخاص يعني صغار بالعمر بمناطق فيها عليها ضغط مادي، ضغط معنوي بسبب اعباء اللجوء والنزوح والمشاكل اللي بتعرض لها العراق بشكل خاص، كردستان، وايضا المنطقه بشكل عام. شيء جميل حكيتيه انت، اللي هو انه المشروع او مشاركتك المشاريع هاي ساهمت بانها ترفع الثقة بالنفس عندك، وهذا إشي كثير جميل وحلو إن نشوفه، وكيف تحولت الطاقة السلبية اللي كانت موجودة إلى طاقة إيجابية، والآن أنت بتحلمي إنك تفتحي مشروع حكيتي لي. إذا أنا بدي أتجاوز النص أسألك سؤال سريع، لو بدك تفتحي مشروع من خلال شغلك مع ILO، شو هو حلمك؟ أي مشروع بالضبط؟
إذا كان مشروع يعني متعلق بمجال دراستي، فدراستي علوم حاسبات، فمشروع متعلق بالتكنولوجيا، و مشروع متعلق بالتكنولوجيا ومواصلات.
تمام تمام. طيب انا بدي اسال سؤال اخر. هلا انت لما بتنزلي على المدينه بتحسي بانه الامور صارت شويه اريح فيما يتعلق بالمواصلات بعد الابلكيشن اللي او بعد الشغل اللي حضرتك اشتغلتيه والمبادره اللي عملتيها؟
إيه، صار أريح. من حولي أصدقائي والناس اللي أعرفهم صاروا يطلبون التاكسي من خلال البطاقة اللي سويناها، والتاكسي تجي للمكان اللي يريدونه.
تمام تمام. طيب اخر سؤال قبل ما اخلص، قبل ما ننتقل للمشارك الثاني او المتحدث الثاني. كيف عرفتي عن برنامج ILO، برنامج منظمه العمل؟
كنت أشارك في تدريبات أكتب، فمن خلال من خلال منظمة أكتب تعرفنا على منظمة ILO. انضمينا إلى اجتماع حضروا فيها ILO، وشرحوا لنا عن هذه التدريبات، وأنهم راح يدعمون الشباب يفتحون مشاريعهم يعني من خلال الأكتب.
تمام تمام. امل، انا شكرا، حاب اشكرك كثير باسم المنظمين. شكرا على مداخلتك، واحتمال نرجع لك
شكرا
بعد شوي.
لك.
شكرا جزيلا.
شكرا. شكرا.
Moving now to our next guest, Sayyid Ali Fawaz. Ali is 29 years old, Syrian, currently a master's student at the German Jordanian University in Jordan, studying social work, refugees, and immigration. Ali was part of the Employment Intensive Investment Program, the so-called short EIIP, funded by Germany. Under the project, Syrians and Jordanians contribute to the improvement of local infrastructure with a focus on maintenance and cleaning of roads, highways, and municipal buildings and facilities. In addition, the program seeks to improve the living conditions of vulnerable Jordanians and Syrian refugees through enhancing their employability and access to jobs using intensive methods in infrastructure works. Ali will be sharing his insights and experience with us. صباح الخير علي.
صباح النور، أهلا أستاذ.
شكرا جزيلا لحضورك. علي، فيك لو سمحت تعطينا هيك شوي تخبرنا عن تجربتك من لما انتقلت إلى الأردن عام 2012. شو نوع التحديات اللي واجهتها من حيث التعليم والتوظيف من ناحية، وكيف تغلبت عليها، ومشاركتك ببرنامج التشغيل من أجل الاستثمار في مشاريع ذات العمالة المكثفة في تطوير مهاراتك. كيف ساهمت مشاركتك بهذا المشروع بتحسين فرص عملك المستقبلية؟ تفضل علي.
تمام، يعطيك العافية أستاذي. بداية أود شكر القائمين على هذا اللقاء والضيوف الكرام لإعطائي الفرصة للحديث عن نفسي وأبرز المراحل التي مررت بها أكاديميا ومهنيا منذ خروجي من بلد سوريا إلى وقتنا الحالي. خرجت من سوريا في أوائل عام 2012 نظرا للظروف التي تمر بها البلاد، متجها إلى الأردن، وقد أنهيت آنذاك تعليمي الثانوي وآملا بالعودة خلال أشهر قليلة. لكن ازدياد الوضع سوءا وتعقيدا في تلك الفترة التفتت لي البحث عن فرصة لإكمال تعليمي، لأنه كان يشكل أولوية بالنسبة لي. وبعد الانقطاع عام عن الدراسة والبحث هنا وهناك عن سواء منح دراسية أو عمل مناسب لأتمكن من إكمال تعليمي، سجلت في كلية الآداب اللغة الإنجليزية فرع الترجمة في جامعة الإسراء، وكنت مضطرا للعمل لتأمين أقساط الدراسة. كما تعلم كنت أدرس تعليما ذاتيا سيلف فاندد، والمعيشة كذلك لتدبير أمور المعيشة. فإيجاد فرصة العمل كان تحديا كبيرا لشخص مثلي في مثل ظل هذه الظروف التي الموجودة يعني، وبعض القوانين. لكنني لم أفقد حلمي وشغفي في إكمال تعليمي لنفع مجتمعي والمجتمع المضيف كذلك. فعملت في تلك الفترة في سوبر ماركت قريبة من سكني، وحاولت أن تكون ساعاتي الدراسية إما مسائية متأخرة أو في أيام محددة من الأسبوع. بعد التخرج كان لابد لي من البحث عن عمل أحبه، فكان توجهي للعمل في المنظمات الإنسانية والإغاثية، لأنني منذ أن كنت في الجامعة كنت متطوعا مع بعض الفرق التطوعية مثل تجمع الطلبة السوريين في الجامعات الأردنية وبعض الفرق الإغاثية الأخرى. وبعد البحث تطوعت مع منظمة كير الدولية في مجال إدخال البيانات، ومن ثم مع منظمة الكاريتاس الدولية في برنامج تقييم الحالات والزيارات المنزلية. أما من ناحية العمل في مشاريع التشغيل باستخدام أسلوب العمالة المكثف من خلال الاستثمار في البنية التحتية معطية، ففي عام 2019 قدمت لفرصة عمل مع منظمة العمل الدولية من خلال إعلان أعلنته بلدية لواء الموقر لتنفيذ مشروع بالتعاون مع منظمة العمل الدولية. وبعد المقابلة وتقديم الشهادات والخبرات خاصة في استخدام الحاسوب وبرامجه، تم اختياري للعمل كمدخل بيانات. ونظرا لمحدودية يعني فرص العمل وقلتها وبعض القوانين والمهن التي تعتبر مغلقة أمام العمالة الوافدة، كانت فرصة ممتازة ولها العديد من الآثار الإيجابية على شخصيتي في عدة جوانب. أود ذكر أبرز هذه الجوانب. فهنالك على الصعيد أولا على الصعيد المهني الوظيفي، فخلال تلك الفترة عملت على مختلف برامج المايكروسوفت أوفيس كفرز البيانات وتحليلها وتدقيقها وجمعها وإرسالها وإلى آخره من أمور البرمجة. ثانيا على الصعيد المادي، وكوني ما زلت أكمل تعليمي في الدراسات العليا وكذلك أعي الأسرة، كان لمخصصات المالية أثر ملموس في تخفيف الأعباء وتأمين أساسيات سبل المعيشة والحياة اليومية، وخاصة في فترة تفشي فيروس كورونا والحظر الشامل التي مرت به البلاد. وبقرار من إدارة المشروع ممثلة بالمهندس أنس البخيت كضابط ارتباط، فلقد تلقينا رواتب يعني تلك الفترة دون انقطاع في فترة يعني كانت حرجة زادت فيها الأعباء والمخصصات والمصاريف اليومية. أما الناحية الثالثة فكانت من الناحية الاجتماعية، كان لهذا المشروع أثراً علي. فخلال تلك الفترة تعرفت على الكثير خلال فترة العمل من أبناء المجتمع المحلي، وكونت يعني معهم علاقات طيبة ما زالت يعني. وكذلك تعرفت على طبيعة عمل المؤسسات المدنية مثل البلديات، طبيعة عملها، خدماتها المحلية لمجتمعاتهم ومهامها. وكذلك اكتسبت معرفة أكبر في المنظمات والهيئات الأممية. هذا ما أود مشاركتكم به أستاذي.
شكرا جزيلا علي. كنت معنا من الأردن، والله يعطيك ألف عافية. واحدة من الشغلات الأساسية اللي أنا يعني أخذتها من الحديث تبعك مش بس المهارات اللي أنت حصلت عليها، ولكن رغبتك بأنه أنت تكون التعليم بالنسبة لك أولوية، وربط التعليم مع العمل والاستفادة من البرامج المقدمة من ILO وبدعم من الحكومة الأردنية طبعا بأنه يصير في عمل أو توفير فرص عمل داخل البلديات. شكرا جزيلا لك.
أهلا وسهلا، شكرا لك.
Listening to the two speakers and their inspiring experiences, it's important today to also listen to stakeholders and experts who work in the field to ensure that the implications of the crisis, especially on youth groups and women, are managed, and that programs are designed to reduce the impact of the crisis and transform challenges into opportunities, not only for refugees, but also to hosting communities. For that, programs were designed to build the capacities of people, especially women and youth, and enable access to labor market, keeping the balance between what is needed and what is provided. At the same time, ensuring that social cohesion is maintained and strengthened. Today, we're having guests representing the different programs and institutions working to respond to the crisis and provide what is needed to enable refugees and host communities to have a better future in times of conflict and crisis. Our next speaker is Dr. Elke Löbel. Welcome, Dr. Elke. Good morning. Dr. Löbel.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. Germany has been one of the lead donors for several years in a row in the region around Syria. It's continuing to support refugees and host communities to face and cope with the severe challenges arising from the war in Syria, but also COVID-19. In 2016, Germany has started the Partnership for Prospects, or the so-called P4P initiative, to increase resilience and social cohesion in the countries most affected by the Syria crisis. Looking at your impressive bio, Dr. Löbel, you are currently the BMZ's Commissioner for Refugee Policy since 2015. You were the head of the BMZ's Middle East Division, and between 1996 and 2000, you worked on the ground as a development worker for the German Development Service in Bolivia, gaining prime experience of development cooperation on the ground. Allow me to start by asking, what are the key objectives of your work in the region? How do you implement them? And if we may also go a bit further, and if you look back at the beginning of this intervention, how do you evaluate this program as a tool to respond to the crisis? The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Faraz. I know I have 7 minutes, and the question is could be answered in 1 hour. But let me start first of all with thanking everybody. I'm so happy to speak to you today. And let me also start with saying I can't believe it's almost 10 years ago when I first visited Satari. Talking to people fleeing from incredible violence in Syria. It's 10 years of Syrian conflict, and it has
çatışmalar başlayalı 10 yıl
in the neighboring countries. We heard 2 people right now, and I have to react on that because everybody knows I'm a very emotional and passionate person working for the region and for the Syrian refugee situation. Shukran, Amal and Ali, for your words, for your engagement. Some times ago, I also visited Iraq and also Jordan, the infrastructure project accompanying my minister, Minister Müller. And I want to send greetings and from his side also. He assures his ongoing support, which is very important. For years, the refugees and the host communities and hosting governments have undertaken a tremendous effort and must not be left alone to cope with the challenges. So this is my main first message. Count on German support, and I think I look to my colleague from the Netherlands. We know what you are working on in the region, so thank you so much. Shukran, Amal and Ali. This is very, very encouraging. You are talking to us. So now let's talk about the successes, the implementation. The reason why we work, in addition to our bilateral cooperation in the region, is that we want to support the Syrian refugees and their hosts, both with short and medium-term employment, providing rapid income and livelihood opportunities, which we saw from the beginning, which is essential. Faris, the event focuses on success stories and objectives. So the key political objective of P4P, as you mentioned right now, is to create these perspectives, and despite situations of economic distress and social tensions, we think this objective has become even more relevant because of COVID-19. We have a protracted crisis, but we have an additional crisis with COVID-19. What gives us hope is that the flexibility and context-specific design of our P4P initiative has proven to be successful, even in COVID-19 times. We have created over 400,000 jobs in the past 5 years, while the employment opportunities are mostly short to medium term. There are additional long-term effects, as Ali mentioned it. We work on infrastructure. Streets have been rehabilitated, public buildings renovated, new green spaces have been created, all with a benefit beyond short-term employment. Through the financing of teacher salaries in 2020, 470,000 Syrian students had access to education. We heard from Amal and Ali what that means. And I'm very happy that Ali joined the German-Jordan University in 2011 when I was still in charge for this area. We really fought for the university. I'm very happy about that. We had 2 scientific evaluation of our P4P program. I can shorten this because Mr. Roxin will later on talk about this. And I think it's important to see exactly what works and then learn from the what works and what does not work. The studies, and this is sure, have shown the positive impact on social cohesion. And this is very important. I want to stress that. With our partners, some of them are today on the panel, we have also started to promote even longer term jobs because we are also in a bilateral cooperation with the countries in the Syria area. Providing assistance for startups, offering vocational training, which is a very German issue. We work for decades in that. In 2020, we have even been able to create over 10,000 long-term jobs, which is socioeconomically very important for us to learn from how we can manage that. Our top priority remains to continue labor-intensive employment measures and salary payments for teachers. We have a good cooperation for years with Unicef. To sum up, I hope my time is not running out, Feras. I have 4 points I would like to share with you.
Please, you still have
First
time.
of all, scaling up by building strong partnerships is essential. Thanks to UNICEF, thanks to the ILO in Jordan and in Iraq, thanks to the governments in Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon, Turkey. I would like to mention UNRWA, which is in charge for a very specific group of refugees. And I think I would also like to thank the Netherlands, our partner there. We worked a lot on MHPSS. It's so great to have partners where you can find a joint issue you talk about and you implement. In Jordan, which is crucial for us, we work on the multiplying on the impact of our work, and we link short-term employment generation with much more structural approaches. This is in the 10th years of the crisis. We have to do that. We cannot think only on short-term. So what is a success story, and what we started from the beginning is that we always said we have to generate income under decent work conditions. This is why ILO is our partner. And at the same time, do things in favor of the host communities and the host governments, like maintenance of infrastructure, which lasting effect on communities and governments. We partner with the ILO in cooperation with the Jordan government, for example, and the KfW, and we reach the most vulnerable and improve resilience of refugees, and we strengthen social cohesion. Second point, it's essential to strengthen the resilience of refugees and host communities. We learned that by predictable multi-year funding. The first Syria conference in 2014 was in Berlin, and we were still discussing about how we can manage to have more multi-year funding. This is 6 years ago. And we have to talk much more about the so-called humanitarian development peace nexus, because we are also talking about inside Syria, and we're talking about additional crisis situations because of COVID-19. Third, again, Amal and Ali, thank you for joining us today. It's so important to hear from you that employment and skills is key for living an independent and dignified life and to increase resilience in the people, especially in situations of forced displacement. And especially, Amal, thank you for joining us, for women who still face too many obstacles. This is why we have established a quota in our projects. A minimum of 30% of all jobs that are created through the P4P initiatives are for women already today. And we want to upscale that because the women are very important for the future of the families, and they should have a place in the skills and employment situation, which is much, much higher than now. Last point. Employment can foster social cohesion. We need to invest as much as possible in supporting peaceful societies. We have to thank the hosting governments and thank them for the mutual trust and understanding between us and the governments to create much more understanding between refugees and host communities. Real thanks to the governments. I would like to mention Lebanon, which is a very difficult situation right now, Jordan, Turkey, Iraq. Thank you very much. We cannot do it without you. Last point is thanks to everybody. Again, shukran, Amal and Ali. You are the ambassadors for the Syrian refugees, showing what can be met, what we can do. And the message to all of you, keep engaged together with us. Together we can make a difference. Thank you so much for the event today.
Dr. Lebel, thank you very much. If I may just respond very quick. 4,000 jobs created in 2020, 10,000 long-term jobs were also created. Providing vocational training, partnering with governments, responding to needs, partnering with ILO, Unicef, being part of an international community that functions and operates together without excluding any group and addressing marginalized and vulnerable groups of the society. I think I would just repeat the sentence that you said at the beginning. I think, yes, we can count on the German support. Thank you very much. Moving to our next esteemed guest from the Netherlands, Ms. Brigitte Tazelaar. Good morning, Ms. Tazelaar.
Good morning.
Ms. Tazelaar is the Deputy Director General for International Cooperation at the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She's a career diplomat with over 25 years of experience in political affairs, human rights, and development cooperation. She served in Ramallah as head of mission and has rich experience and knowledge of Middle Eastern policies and political dynamics. Ms. Tazelaar, the Netherlands has actively contributed to responding to the ramifications of the conflict in Syria through addressing protracted displacement and supporting the economic and social inclusion of the displaced Syrian population and their host communities. Your flagship project in the region is incidentally also called Prospects. And we just listened to the great Amal from the Hook, who benefited from this program and turned her ideas into initiatives that really positively had an effect on her society and enabled a problem to be solved, making the lives of thousands of inhabitants in the Hook an easy thing to do. But you have taken a little bit different route than Germany, working with 5 UN and IFI partners on a broader spectrum of initiatives focused around refugee inclusion. Again, the case we have heard earlier illustrates the impact that such joined-up programming can have on the lived experiences of displaced and host communities. Ms. Tazelaar, can you tell us a bit more about the ideas behind your approach, which I believe has transformative ambitions? How do we ensure such transformative projects remain effective in the post-COVID-19 economic landscape? The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Feraz, and thank you very much for that really kind introduction. But first, let me also start by thanking Amal and Ali for their stories. I wish we had a side event with only stories like that. It is so motivating and empowering, not only for them, to be honest, also for me. knowing what we're doing it for. So thank you so much. I think it also showed that things like self-esteem, dignity, gaining confidence, all those soft skills are not soft in the word that it actually expresses. They are extremely necessary skills in order to be successful, not only for yourself, but also for the society and the economy. So really, thank you very much. It was very motivating. So our program on prospects, the way we think is that the humanitarian and development sides of the two sides of one coin have to be brought together, because we're mostly talking about a protected crisis. We've only had this this instrument for 2 years now. And so we don't have the beautiful figures that my German colleague actually mentioned, that Elke mentioned. But we will be able to give a bit more information about the figures by the end of the year at the GRF summit, the Global Refugee Forum summit. But of course we have experience and feedback. And there are challenges and things that we see are working. One of the challenges is that to find these partners with different mandates and different operating modalities to work together, to join up in interventions, it takes much more time, and it is asking a lot of effort from them. I mean, this is really a challenge. But we're also starting to see the payback of that hard work, because we see that these interventions are built around shared analysis of the same reality from the point of view of the refugees and their host communities, instead from a preset of institutional strategies or preconceived notions about what refugees need. So I think that is really an asset. But let me share the ideas and principles behind the approach. And Unicef and ILO will be able to give some concrete examples. So indeed, our prospects, I don't know who's the original one, whether we copied it or the Germans copied it, but let's just think great minds think alike, is designed as an instrument to transform, both on the nature of funding available for protected displacement crisis and the nature of designing and implementing programs. So we're offering through prospects, we are offering what we all realized already in 2016 at the GRF in 2019, that we are dealing with protracted refugee crisis. What is needed are flexible, predictable, multi-annual funding that bridge the humanitarian and the development divide. Elke also mentioned it very, very clearly. So we committed about $500 million US for 4 years in 8 countries, including Jordan and Lebanon. And we want to create a space where shifting gears between humanitarian and development interventions is easier, and that the partners can adjust their programming to the changing context without losing the long-term development perspective. So secondly, we try to transform the way in which the funding is being spent. So the Netherlands brings 5 critical UN partners together and encourages alignment with the plans of the host countries. 2 of them, ILO, UNICEF, are here at the table, and the other 3 are UNHCR, the World Bank, and International Financing Corporation, IFC, which works, of course, directly with private sector actors. We feel it is really important to bring them in because they are potential employment providers. So we hope to further strengthen the cultural shift between joined-up planning and programming between the UN and the IFIs, a shift that puts the affected people and their needs first and institutional interests second. I mentioned it before. In prospects, our partners will plan their interventions together and discuss them with the national government, instead of each agency having its own plans and discussing it with the respective government. And we hope that there will be less overlap of each other's work, and that there will be no gaps left. And we also hope that in this way we can achieve efficiencies in the way interventions are being designed and implemented. So how to keep the momentum after this pandemic? In our view, the pandemic has confirmed actually the importance of some of the main shifts in our way of thinking and acting around refugee hosting that started before. So now, as before, facilitating refugee inclusion in the economies of the host countries remains critical, also in the post-COVID economic recovery. And such inclusion increases the resilience of both refugees and, we should never forget, the host communities. To achieve this, maintaining donor funding is essential, but donors and the UN system cannot achieve this alone. Of course, we need committed national governments as critical partners on this agenda. And I think Elke mentioned it very clearly. We have to thank all those countries who are doing a tremendous job to this extent. And I explicitly would like to also convey to His Excellency, Mr. Nasser Schreide, if I pronounce it correctly, our ministry's deep appreciation of the commitment of the Jordanian government to working together on these goals. For example, Jordan has a COVID-19 vaccination campaign that includes refugees, contributing to the resilience of the whole society. And last year, Jordan proposed to increase economic resilience by expanding social security to currently uncovered workers. And our government then was able to announce supporting that program through our Prospects program in a meeting with the minister last year. And last but certainly not least are the affected people themselves. In order for our interventions to be truly transformative, they must be responsive to the people's needs and challenges. And for this, we need to involve them, and we are involving them from the project design, implementation, and later on monitoring, evaluation, and learning on what we have achieved and not achieved, and how we should improve our work together. So we are committed to continue supporting the countries in the region to ensure that all vulnerable groups, including refugees, are included in their post-COVID economic recovery. And we remain, of course, committed to working jointly with other donors, governments, and I mentioned the Germans because we're very happy indeed to work with them on a subject that is so dear to our heart, mental health and psychosocial support, MHPSS. And we know a lot of Syrians are suffering from that. And it actually, once you are suffering from mental health problems, you're blocked. It's difficult to move forward. And so it's extremely important to give adequate attention to that. But we look forward to continue working with other donors, governments, of course, key UN actors, IFIs, as well as civil society on these nationally driven solutions for a sustainable inclusion. I hope I have not outpassed my 7 minutes, Firas.
No, it's okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for the valuable input. Ms. Tazelar, it's indeed important that if we want to have effective fruits and see effective fruits of our work, to have a shared analysis, as you said, from the point of view of refugees and communities, and also to engage governments to be part of providing solutions. But also when you spoke about the transformative nature of funding and designing and implementation, I think this is crucial to be able to sensitively respond to the needs on the ground. And also thank you for mentioning that it's important to bridge the gap, not the gap, but maybe just to strengthen the relationship between humanitarian work and development intervention, and creating that space for everybody to benefit and not to repeat their work or do harm. Thank you very much. I would like to move now to our next esteemed speaker for today. I would like to introduce Dr. Ruba Jaradat, the regional director for Arab States since 2015 and ILO Assistant Director General. Dr. Jaradat holds a PhD in Management and International Development from the UK. Dr. Jaradat, looking at the enormous amount of work that the regional office has been dealing with, not only since the Syrian crisis and its implication sweeping the region, but even before that, you have an enormous and very delicate task that goes beyond overseeing and advising states on labor policies, but also supports hosting countries to improve their structural and institutional capacities to better respond to the crisis. Also, the ILO is advising other countries on how to best respond with programs and coordinate the work to avoid duplication and doing harm to host communities, hence negatively affecting social cohesion. Dr. Ruba, a decade into this crisis, what can you tell us about the ILO's role in the response to the Syria crisis, and what, in your view, would be important to focus on, looking and going forward, both to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, but also offer better solutions to the crisis? Dr. Ruba, the floor is yours.
Okay, now can you hear me? Yes, okay, okay. Anyway, thank you, Firas. And you know, as you and Dr. Elke mentioned, I also cannot believe it's already been a decade into the Syrian crisis. I'm really happy to hear from Ali and Amal how, you know, crisis support projects can make a difference on the ground. And also, Amal, I hear you well. You mean you need, and there is also, we recognize that there is a need for more training to develop and expand, you know, your businesses and small businesses in such areas. I would say, you know, the situation in Syria and the wider region remains more crucial than ever. Neighboring countries, including Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey, Iraq, Egypt, they continue to host an estimate of 7.2 million Syrian refugees as of November 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic has worsened the already pre-existing difficult socioeconomic conditions of refugees and communities that host them. Recent ILO estimates show that working hours in the Arab state region suffered a 9% loss in 2020 relative to the last quarter of 2019. And in Turkey, working hours decreased by 16.4% in 2020 compared to the scenario without the pandemic. However, you know, despite the many existing challenges, through the support of our partners and hand in hand with them, we have been able to respond to the refugee crisis in a number of crucial ways. First, you know, the ILO has supported the creation of over 1.4 million working days of members of both refugees and host communities in the region. Incidentally, 20% of these beneficiaries were women. We also have given access to refugees to formal labor markets by promoting decent work for all. In Jordan, for example, we've worked with the government to facilitate issuing over 215,000 work permits to Syrian refugees. And I would like to echo Brigitta's thanks to the government of Jordan for their collaboration. The ILO has also supported developing the labor market language and soft skills of over 37,000 vulnerable workers and job seekers from both the refugees and host communities. We have also facilitated over 30,500 job placement, more than half of which were for refugees. And this also includes 10,500 job placements with access to the Turkish social protection system. We've developed the capacity of business services providers and other women and men from communities across the region to help them establish around 1,800 small businesses. Well, I mean, looking forward and building on the lessons we learned from, you know, the pandemic and the COVID response as well, I would like to highlight 3 points when it comes to the ILO response and more generally to the international community's response to the crisis, to the Syria crisis. The first is the importance of investing in longer-term solutions to creating resilience, recovery, and peace through decent work opportunities for refugees and host communities, particularly at this stage of the crisis. And, you know, as both Ms. Brigitta and Dr. Elke stressed, this serves as a very important bridge between humanitarian and developmental dimensions of the response, the human development peace nexus that Dr. Elke mentioned. It's also crucial to shift from cash-based approach, including cash for work programs, to sustainable job placements and systematic public works. It's important to not only invest in short-term solutions, but also to tackle the systematic challenges that offer longer-term prospects in terms of labor market and employment policy reform to address both the informality and the inequality. Secondly, I would like to highlight the crucial importance of partnership. The ILO would not have been able to promote decent work for Syrian refugees and host communities without the generous support of our development partners. Starting with BMZ, whom I thank for being the first to entrust the ILO with crucial task of improving livelihoods and resilience of refugees and host communities through the creation of short-term employment, the EIIP programs, the capital investment for host communities under the EIIP programs. We also thank the government of Netherlands for their support and the innovative approach they fostered through the Global Prospects partnership that brings together humanitarian and development actors and addressing collaborative ways, education, employment protection, and challenges related to forced displacement. We also extend our thanks to the EU, Norway, USA, Denmark, Australia, Italy, among other donors. I also emphasize would like to emphasize that both BMZ and Netherlands represent, they noted previously what Dr. Elke and Brigitte noted that about the successful partnership we had, but also the partnership approach in general, whether with donors, with our sister UN agencies in the context of the UN reform, and also it's important, our partnership with our constituents at the local level. And third and final, I would like to highlight the importance of our impact on social coherence, social cohesion and coherence. And, as Dr. Elke also mentioned, working jointly with refugees and host communities can, definitely not, does not, serve to reduce tensions does serve to reduce tensions and mistrust. And I'd like to mention also that, according to an ILO survey that was conducted in Jordan, more than 40% of Jordanians agreed that, Syrian refugees have had a positive impact on Jordanian societies. In Turkey, we have seen so far that supporting both refugees and host communities in one workplace can strengthen social cohesion and increase positive.
Suriyeli mültecileri hem de ev sahibi toplulukları bir iş yerinde desteklemek buradaki sosyal uyum bağlamında olumlu etkiler yarattığını Türkiye'de gördük.
We will continue to be it will continue to be the promotion of transition to sustainable livelihoods for refugees and host communities alike, transforming displacement into opportunity for development. If we want to build back better, if we want to the new normal to be better, that leaves no one behind, we, humanitarian and development actors of the multilateral system, we definitely need to act together. Thank you, and back to you, Firas.
Dr. Jaradat, shukran ilayk. Thank you very much. If I may mention some of key points that you shared with us. Of course, it's important to create the link to our first two speakers and the third to come. It's important. Such an great outcome would have never happened without having the ILO in the middle of this storm. Coordinating, but at the same time providing solutions and trying to liaison between the different actors in the whole region. It's a huge crisis in the region. the creation of 1.4 million working days, 20% of them for women, enabling access for refugees to a formal labor market, as you said, 10,000 in Turkey, but also 215,000 work permits to Syrian refugees in Jordan, and the training of 37,000 that you have provided has indeed helped not only mitigate the crisis, but also provide hope for young people that there is a way out of this crisis and that we can shift these challenges and turn it into opportunities. So thank you very much for that, because it is a tough job to, on the one hand, meet expectations and also practice the mandates that the LO has in the region. Thank you, Dr. Jaradat. My next panelist for today is Mr. Ted Shaiban, the Regional Director for the Mena Unicef since 2019. Mr. Shaiban has a long experience in working on emergency programs and relief services. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Biology, a degree in Political Science, and a Master of Arts in Development and Arab Studies. Mr. Shaiban's UNICEF's main focus is children and youth, looking at the dimensions of the Syria crisis and the spillover to other neighboring countries, and taking into consideration that half of the population in the MENA are children and youth under 24. Youth unemployment rates are really high, actually the highest globally, around 30%. My question to you, Mr. Shaiban, looking at those numbers, why is a collaboration between partners is so critical to address the issue of transition from learning to earning? Mr. Ted, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Faraz. Can I confirm you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Very good, thank you. Well, firstly, let me say that UNICEF is very pleased to join this panel of key partners with whom it has been able to implement solutions on the ground to skill and empower young people, to help them access job opportunities and contribute to strengthening cohesion within and among communities. First, Amal and Ali, who are so inspiring, but also all of our partners from Jordan, from Turkey, from the Netherlands, from Germany and ILO, who have done so much to support young people affected by the Syrian crisis over the last years. I think the diversity of this panel illustrates the reason why collaboration and partnerships are absolutely critical when addressing important challenges young people in the region, especially those affected by the Syrian crisis, face when it's time for them to transit from the world of learning to the world of work. And to be adequate, this response needs to be multi-sectoral, systemic, at scale, and innovative. And it needs, especially as several of my colleagues have said, to rely on the strength and the skills of young people and their participation. If you allow, I'd like to share 3 overall messages about how these partnerships work and make a difference. But let me start by giving a couple of facts about the situation that we're dealing with, and to say that young people, including young refugees, are now facing an acute learning and employment crisis. The crisis in Syria has reversed earlier gains in terms of access and quality of education, with more than 3.2 million Syrian children, including adolescents, currently being out of school, including 40% of girls.
Okul dışında kalmış durumda.
We estimate that 2/3 of Syrian refugees aged 15 to 24 are not in education, employment, or training, and more than 3/4 of girls are in such a situation. And this leads to concerns about child marriage, mostly affecting girls, but also issues of child labor. However, there's much that has been done to address the needs of children and young people, and the steps we have taken together have shown that there is no lost generation, as we've heard from Amal and from Ali, and that working together we have, and we can continue to make a difference by keeping education going in person where possible, remotely when necessary, or in blended form. And what's important there is that education leads to skills for learning, employability, employment, and citizenship, which can help with the transition to work. By also addressing the demand side of the labor market, the creation of jobs, entrepreneurship opportunities, as well as the supply side of the labor market, and articulating the links between the two. So let me give a couple of examples of that. In Jordan, the Ministry of Education launched Learning Bridges, which is a blended learning program that is supporting up to 1 million young adolescents enrolled in grades 4 to 9 to recover lost learning from previous year and accelerate learning in the new academic year. It is also through the Learning Passport, allowing older out-of-school adolescents and youth to be able to access non-formal content with a focus on life skills, social innovation, digital literacy, and financial literacy, and soon entrepreneurial training. Turning to Lebanon, UNICEF has launched an initiative called Bridge, Outsource, Transform, which is also going to be developed in Jordan. That's a digital platform to connect young people, regardless of their refugee status, with digital skills, training, and micro work opportunity in the digital economy, including data analysis, graphic design, and e-commerce. In Jordan, this is already benefiting 2,000 young people, of which 60% are refugees. And this approach will be scaled up in collaboration with the private sector, but also the Ministry of Digital Economy and Entrepreneurship, together with the Ministry of Labor. We also need to quickly adjust skilling programs to tap into new job opportunities. Lebanon, working with UNICEF, has adapted its skill training program to respond to the COVID pandemic. This was crucial during the COVID response, as well as the socioeconomic knock-on effects. So let me give examples of where partners working together have helped train youth link up with cash opportunities during the COVID response. 1,000 young people were involved in sewing and distributing over 1.7 million masks, which were distributed to primary healthcare centers, to the Ministry of Education, UNHCR centers, to help protect people against COVID. Young people also were involved in cooking and distributing meals to poor families who had their daily income lost during lockdown. 117,000 meals were distributed. And 1,300 youth were involved in the rehabilitation and setup of isolation centers, including the rehabilitation of facilities, including the WASH aspects of that. What we have in these examples are refugees working with host communities to foster innovation, which of course also fosters social cohesion when people work with each other. Let me move to my third point, which is that not only are young people key assets in generating income with proper skilling and access to jobs, but they're also assets in building peace and strengthening cohesion amongst host communities and refugee communities. If I turn to Turkey, UNICEF there, working with the authorities and civil society partners, supports Syrian and Turkish adolescents and young people to broaden their opportunities to participate in social life. There's a program called the Social Cohesion Program, which contributes to increasing meaningful participation opportunities for Turkish and Syrian adolescent and youth. The young people get together and put their ideas and solutions to support vulnerable young people on the table, discuss how they can work to address the needs of those young people. In Jordan, there's a government of Jordan, UNICEF-supported national youth engagement and volunteering platform called Nahnu, which means ourselves, which has been scaled up to reach over 46,000 young people, of which 64% are women or young women. And these young people have spent over 1,100 volunteering hours to help people affected by COVID, to help the community, to help deliver social services. This is a platform that's open to all nationalities, and participation of refugee youth has been actively encouraged and supported. Again, refugees and Jordanians working together. And last, in Syria, 240 adolescents across 7 governorates have worked on generating evidence and formulating recommendations to help stitch war-torn communities. Working to create bridges among communities by addressing common problems related to COVID-19 and creating, again, stitching back a sense of community by working on activities together. So, these are examples of how partners can work together to address young people affected by the Syria crisis and their aspiration to learn and earn. The issue is scale. So it really takes all partners working together to reach further scale. I think what's critical here is to build on community and national systems. The governments in the region have been so generous. Jordan, Turkey, Lebanon, Iraq. How can we work with national and local institutions to reach that scale and bring young people together, create that social cohesion and that aspiration of learning to earning? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shaiban. Thank you very much. Really, really interesting that it's not only about moving from learning to earning, it's also enabling access at the beginning for people to education, and then coordinating to create working opportunities for those who are engaged. You mentioned that it's important not to no lost generation, no one is left behind, and it's important how should we work together to make difference by investing in human capital. You highlighted many interesting numbers, like 3.2 million out of school, 40% are female. This is of huge dimensions, and being able to being there to respond with projects, with initiatives, with programs is crucial. 2/3 of young people between 18 and 24 are not even in any education or training. These are signs of a catastrophe, and without your intervention and the support of other organizations and governments, I think we would have been witnessing a totally different dimensions of the crisis that we have right now. Thank you very much for your intervention. I will move now to our next guest, which is another field of the response to the Syrian crisis. Our next guest is Mr. Ahmed Serdar Yaghmour, working as a project coordinator of the program called Transition to Formality at the Turkish Social Security Institution. Mr. Yaghmour is a social security expert and coordinates the EU Relations Unit at the Turkish Social Security Institute. Besides, he coordinates internationally funded projects. He holds a master's degree in business administration. Mr. Yaghmour, your thesis focused on the impact of unregistered employment on the Turkish social security system. And to support the many Syrian refugees in Turkey, Turkey hosts 4 million refugees and is thus the country hosting the largest number of refugees in the world. The Social Security Institution has, together with the ILO, developed a program supporting the transition to the formal labor market. It includes Syrian and vulnerable Turkish workers in the existing social security system. With the financial support of the KfW, you reimburse social security premiums during 6 months and work permit fees in the case of Syrian workers. Could you please explain the context you are operating in and maybe highlight main obstacles of implementation and some key achievements, please?
Sure. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Before I answer the question, I would like to thank ILO, European Union, KfW, and PRM to support the program. I would like to start with giving background of the program. Although there is no official number, it is estimated that there are around 1 million Syrians working in Turkey. Many of them work informally without access to social security. However, informality does not only affect Syrian workers, but also Turkish workers. Unregistered employment rate for Turkey is around 30%. Therefore, together with ILO, we have decided to implement a transition to formality program. We call it KIGAP in short. Through the program, we are providing incentives to employers to formalize their Syrian and Turkish workers. Syrians under temporary protection need work permit to work registered. Work permit has to be obtained by employer, and employer pays the fee. So our government made the process of getting working permit easier for Syrian employees. This was an important element for program to succeed. With KIGAP, first, we reimburse the working permit fee for Syrians. Second, we reimburse social security premiums for Turkish and Syrian workers during 6 months as long as employees work registered. We have created a software which goes social security institutions related databases and determines whether employers eligible for the reimbursement. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we observed that KIGAP was able to support employers to retain their workers and continue production. Applications from the employers in the field increased, and KIGAP could support enterprises to diversify their production and explore new markets, adapting to new demands that emerged because of the pandemic. For example, some textile companies were able to adapt their production, and they start to produce masks and isolation gown. I would like to give more details about the program and share some of the achievements. In January 2019, SSI and ILO signed the first agreement. Since then, the agreement extended 3 times. As we had a lot of demand from the field, we have started in 5 cities and extended 14 cities. These cities are hosting a majority of the Syrian population, including Ankara and Istanbul. By December 2020, we had supported more than 10,000 formal jobs. Until the end of 2022, we plan to reach additional 7,500 workers. We have seen that KIGAP supported both the creation of new jobs and formalization of existing jobs. Looking at a sample of workers and enterprises supported in 2020, let me highlight the following. With regard to enterprises, most of the enterprises supported through KIGAP were active in the manufacturing sector, especially in textile industry. Around 80% were small and medium-sized enterprises. With regard to workers, 60% of supported workers were Syrian and 20% were women. Now, I would like to talk about the impact assessment prepared by academicians and conducted last year, covering the period between March 2019 and March 2020. Has highlighted that the program had very positive impact in different fields. Impact assessment includes surveys and interviews with employers and employees who benefited from the KIGAP. I would like to elaborate on 6 points that show the positive impact KIGAP has had on the economy, the labor market, and also on social cohesion. First, with regard to employment creation, we found that enterprises that received KIGAP support had a 16% greater employment increase than those that did not. This means that enterprises supported through KIGAP were able to create additional jobs in addition to jobs supported through the program. Second, KIGAP substantially contributed to formalization of the workers. As such, 80% of the Syrian workers were employed formally for the first time, and a large majority said that they prefer work formally instead of receiving social assistance. Third, enterprises mentioned a range of benefits. Bigger companies were able to make new investments and to hire more qualified workers, whereas smaller companies were able to reduce costs and could refrain from laying off workers. Fourth, we had positive findings with regard to sustainability. 97% of the participating enterprises continue to employ all or some of the Syrian workers after KGAP ended. We also follow this from our programs. We see that most of them are working registeredly. Fifth, KGAP also contributed to support social cohesion. Both Syrian and Turkish workers stated that their perceptions changed positively about each other. Finally, last but not least, KGAP had a non-negligible economic impact. KGAP contributed to an increase in national income, tax revenues, and SSI premium revenues, which is also crucial for our institution to support this program. Before I conclude, I would like to thank you for listening, and I hope this type of support from international community continues all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yagmour. It's indeed interesting. I have to wrap up things just to mention that you are addressing also human dignity when you say that you want you enable people to work formally instead of receiving assistance. Thank you very much also for all the numbers that you presented and for the work that you've been doing. And I'm sure that there's a lot of lessons learned that we can move on to other countries. To better understand the type of work and importance of the intervention Mr. Yagmour just presented, allow me to present our next guest, Mr. Amar Sheikh, who's a 22 years old Syrian, currently lives in Istanbul, working in the food production industry and at the same time studying computer engineering. السيد عمار مرحبا. معنا السيد عمار.
السلام عليكم، شكرا على استضافتكم جميعا والله يعطيكم العافيه.
سيد عمار، عندي سؤال. فيك تخبرنا عن خبرتك في مجال العمل بتركيا، خاصة في مشاركتك ببرنامج الانتقال إلى العمل الرسمي اللي ساعدك أنك توصل لسوق العمل الرسمي القانوني. تفضل.
شكرا أستاذ فراس على الاستضافة وشكرا على استماعكم جميعا. طبعا أنا عمار شيخ الكار من سوريا، طالب بهندسة الحاسوب سنة ثالثة، وأعمل بمجال الصناعات الغذائية في تركيا وتحديدا في مدينة اسطنبول. طبعا أسسنا مصنع غذائي في سنة 2017 في منتصف سنة 2017، وحاليا عندنا تقريبا ما يقارب 22 عامل، نسبة 75% منهم لاجئين سوريين، منهم النساء ومنهم الرجال. طبعا بالنسبة للمجال العمل في تركيا واجهنا أول شيء صعوبات. أول سنة طبعا هي سنة 2017 ل 2018 بموضوع الدخول إلى السيستم أو التعرف على السيستم في تركيا والاهتمام بالأمور القانونية والرسمية. كان بمساعدتنا دائما الأستاذ أحمد سردار بإرشادنا بتعريفنا على الأمور القانونية اللي لازم نتبعها. وطبعا نحن حاليا بنقدم عندنا تقريبا أكثر من 25 عامل، وصلنا الحمد لله بسنة 2021. طبعا مثل ما ذكرت 75% منهم من اللاجئين. طبعا كان الدعم المادي جدا لازم لنا طبعا بعد بداية جائحة كورونا بسبب قلة المبيعات وكثرة المصاريف. طبعا بنوه على نقطة مهمة جدا انه نحن العمال الموجودين عندنا نسبة 95% منهم لديهم عائلات ولديهم أطفال، فنحن لا نستطيع وجود من خلال وجود الجائحة لإقالتهم من العمل أو إبعادهم عن العمل بسبب وجود عائلات لديهم وهذه الأمور. فكان برنامج الدعم الدولي مع بالمساندة من مؤسسة الضمان الاجتماعي في تركيا جدا مهم لنا وجدا مفيد لنا، وبنتمنى ان شاء الله الاستمراريه معهم، وبنتمنى ان شاء الله نحن حاليا في خطه توسيع، طبعا طلع الاستاذ احمد سردار عليها. بخطه توسيع ان شاء الله راح نكبر حديث 40 عامل لنهايه هذا العام. وشكرا مره ثانيه على استماعكم، والله يعطيكم العافيه.
سيد عمار، شكرا جزيلا لك. يعني تأسيس عملية الدخول في اللجوء وتأسيس عمل جديد ومساعدة الآخرين وتوفير فرصة عمل للعائلات، هذا إنجاز هائل، وشكرا لك وللسيد يغمور على المداخلتين اللي تقدمتوا فيها.
شكرا.
Our next speaker is His Excellency Mr. Nasser Shraide. It's an honor to have you here, Your Excellency. He is the Jordanian Minister of Planning and International Cooperation since 2020. He has over 22 years of experience in public sector, holds a BA and Masters in Economics with honors from Jordan, Yarmouk University, which is the same university I graduated from. Your Excellency, Jordan, this small country with limited resources, has been for many years the shelter for millions of refugees from different neighboring countries. The Syria crisis has not only added to the economic burden of the country, but also to the social aspects such as resilience and social cohesion and policymaking. With around 1.3 million Syrian refugees, Jordan has developed a response plan, and it has been coordinated and successfully implemented. Your Excellency, how, in your opinion, has the Jordan response plan been utilized to respond to the crisis in terms of resilience and social cohesion? And if I may, what is the vision of the crisis after lasting more than 10 years? The floor is yours. And again, thank you very much for being part of this panel today.
Thank you, Firas. Indeed, the pleasure and honor is mine. I'm happy to be with a number of colleagues. First of all, allow me to recognize Elke and Brigitte and thank them for recognizing Jordan's generosity and hospitality in accommodating the Syrian refugee humanitarian crisis. I also would like to recognize Roba and Ted for their collaboration and important role that they've been playing with Jordan to mitigate and address number of issues, among which is employment. In that context, I would like also to emphasize that the government of Jordan progressive policies, measures, as well as schemes have been contributing to providing a very user-friendly platform for contributing to further resilience and cohesion with regard to Syrians in Jordan. But last recognition, but it's the most important one, I would like to salute Amal, Ali, and Ammar for sharing their experiences with us today. I believe that very inspiring. They've been among, and I think the question is how many were that they are out there that they were not lucky as Amal, Ali, and Ammar. And I believe in terms of scale and coverage, I have many concerns there. I would like to use my time to address three key messages, really. I think the other panelists covered some of the bright side of where things have been over the last decade. I think, first of all, today's realities bring new dynamics to the crisis, adds many challenges, and imposes on us to learn from the success stories and from the mistakes of history. I believe that in employment, while some of the panelists referred that in Jordan, we will be able to generate over 220,000 jobs in the formal sector. We could easily say double than that were created in the informal sector too for Syrian refugees. Unfortunately, women makes less than 7% of those opportunity. But the pandemic have raised additional pressures on Syrians as well as Jordanians. I think we have observed wage cuts, severe ones, between 30 to 50%. Some has lost their jobs also, more dominantly in the informal sector. And others are still struggling with developing the right skills for the right market needs. I believe that while Jordanians also are being faced with a high unemployment rate, actually the pandemic produced an additional 120,000 unemployed Jordanian. Last quarter of 2020 registered almost 25% of unemployment rate. Every year we have around 100,000 of new job seekers. That will add to the pressures on the government of Jordan and on the economy of Jordan to produce the needed job opportunities for both Jordanians as well as Syrians. I believe that the government of Jordan, in terms of a policy framework, has adopted many progressive policies, whether in relation to work permits, flexible movements across industries and across sectors, accommodating the inclusion of new professions to Syrian refugees, and as well as granting Syrians the legal opening of home-based businesses. All that is not going to be sufficient without a real recovery to the economy and a different type of support that would be required to retain jobs in the formal sectors and provide new opportunities in the informal sector. By the way, when we touch vulnerabilities and poverty, I think both Syrians and Jordanians are truly suffering from that. My second issue that I would like to address, we truly appreciated the support of many of the donor countries, among which Germany and the Netherlands. But we still, we believe that we've been observing over the last years some donor fatigue. Last year, for example, we were able in Jordan to pledge less than 50% of the financial resources needed for the Jordan response plan. And because of the pandemic and its repercussions on 2021 and maybe a number of years to come, we believe it's important that we get the needed attention and support for this humanitarian cause. We truly appreciate that the donor community has been looking at Syrian refugees in their hosting communities. And I believe that's the right approach to handle it. But still, I believe because of the pandemic, the scale and the substance of the challenges are much higher. I would like to thank Alika that she referred that we've been struggling to agreeing on a multi-year funding scheme. I think that's something will prepare me to address my last message to you on this panel. In preparation to the upcoming conference in Brussels, we have been working on an update of the Jordan response plan for 2021. Actually, later today, it would be published on our website and identifies over 2.4 billion in terms of financial needs for this year to address a number of priorities around a number of key pillars to respond to the different challenges that Syrian refugee community in Jordan are facing. And we count on the international community support to provide the needed support and the needed finance for that. But we also are calling on everybody to revisit delivery mechanisms. We believe that we should adopt more efficient and effective delivery mechanisms that can be more priority driven and we also that we can help us in counting and measuring pledges as well as impact. A number of panelists referred to moving into cash-based and adopting e-wallet to deliver on many of the needs for Syrians. And I believe collectively we can be more innovative and creative in cutting down overheads and administration costs to better utilize the resources that can be made available in supporting our endeavor. In closing, I would like to reiterate that the support that is needed is much more important today than ever. And I believe that while we have witnessed 10 years of the realities, we should really think on a new framework that will cover another 5 to 10 years, particularly in light of the political perspectives, which will take at least 3 to 5 years to find one and conceive it, and the reconstruction that is needed to happen in Syria also to provide the right platform for a voluntary return of Syrian refugees from their hosting countries. We have to understand that unless there is a home to go back to, an opportunity to go back to, many of the Syrian brothers will stay in their respective hosting countries. I believe we would be calling on another compact conference to address the new prospects that are needed for such a new framework, as well as to address the level of commitments and support that the international community needs to place on this humanitarian case. I'm sorry if I took longer time than I should, but thank you for us again, and the floor is yours.
Mr. Shraide, thank you very, very much for this valuable input. I fully agree with you, and I thank you again for highlighting many different aspects of 10 years Syria crisis and the role Jordan has played. Jordan is indeed small in size, but huge and great in impact, and that shows the numbers that you just mentioned. Not only that, but also that Jordan is still committed to working together with international partners, but also not to address the crisis itself, but also to respond to national and local needs and pressures. It stays in a oasis of security and a refuge, hosting those in need in the region. And indeed, I think one very important thing is that there is a donor fatigue, as you mentioned, but I'm so glad that despite donor fatigue, you are still willing to continue the work and the support that you've been providing. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Shraide. Your Excellency, for your input. If I may move on, I would like first to say that Ms. Tazelar will be leaving because she's committed with other issues outside. So thank you very much, Ms. Tazelar, also for joining us today. Now I still have two more short interventions, and then we will wrap up. First, we have Dr. Helge Roxin, a senior evaluator at the German Institute for Development Evaluation, DEVAL. It's an independent evaluation institute mandated by the federal government to conduct strategic evaluations related to development politics. Helge has been working for the institute since 2012. His focus lies on impact evaluations with his main sectoral expertise in the areas of crisis and conflict resolution, democratization, and gender and empowerment. He is the team leader of an evaluation team that evaluated the effectiveness of German development cooperation in dealing with forced migration crisis, based on Partnership for Prospects initiative, which Ms. Löbel had mentioned earlier, in the period from 2016 to 2019. Dr. Roxin, would you please share with us, in a nutshell, some of the main findings of the evaluation study?
Now the loudspeaker should work. Thank you for giving me the opportunity and the floor, Faris. As a quick reminder on the subject of the evaluation, maybe since it's already more than 1 hour ago that Ms. Löbel talked about it, we evaluated the two main pillars of the Partnership for Prospect initiative, and that was labor-intensive short-term employment measures, so-called cash for work, and salary payments.
كثافة العمالة ونقد لقاء العمل. وبما أن الوقت تأخر أريد أن أشدد على نتائج 5 الأساسية من التقييم. أولا لاحظنا أن مبادرة التعاون ليست مجموعة من التدابير منسقة فقط، ولكنها تساهم بشكل مؤقت أيضا في التخليص من معاناة اللاجئين في المجتمعات.
More vulnerable households, and in particular to women, due to their generally more vulnerable situation to begin with, women socioeconomically benefit more from projects than men do. Third, the evidence shows that effectiveness is predominantly short-term and not lasting in terms of economic well-being or even job creation. However, the Partnership for Prospect measures have at least two lasting effects. First, they signal vulnerable people that they are not being left alone, and thus they foster life optimism. And second, Partnership for Prospect measures strengthen social cohesion between refugees and people of host communities. This can be illustrated by the fact that Turkish participants, for example, of Cash for Work, permanently have a significantly higher trust in Syrians than non-participants. And Syrian participants feel more part of the local community than non-participants in Cash for Work. Overall, we found that the contribution made by labor-intensive Cash for Work jobs is stabilizing an already relatively high level of social cohesion in Jordan and strengthening social cohesion in Turkey. Fourth, we also found evidence for the importance of the equal distribution of support measures and support to local infrastructure, both as key elements for the general acceptance of refugees and host communities. Hence, the Partnership for Prospect initiative also reduces pressure on the infrastructure of host communities. And finally, initiative is the Teacher Salaries Program. Here in both Jordan and Turkey, the Partnership for Prospect measures contribute substantially to reducing burdens on the education system. In both countries, the targeted schooling figures have so far been achieved. The rate of schooling was increased in Turkey, and at least it has been stabilized in Jordan. Overall, about 600,000 Syrian students got access to education. Even if the measures here are only partially effective with regard to the quality of education, the Partnership for Prospect also contributes indirectly to stabilization in the host communities by facilitating schooling for most Syrian refugee children. And finally, I would like to have one concluding remark, which is also attached a little bit to what has been said before. We concluded that given the protected crisis context, we recommend not only to continue with the Partnership for Prospect initiative, but also to further focus on short-term job creation in order to address as many vulnerable people as possible. These measures are more effective than we initially thought. To not be misunderstood, this does of course not rule out long-term job creation measures when possible and in the right context. And examples for this have been mentioned before, but this has opportunity costs, and long-term jobs are more expensive, and the main challenge here is the coverage. So as long as the demand for support remains as high as it is, and at the same time resources are scarce and peace in the region is not in sight, we think that short-term measures such as casual work remain an effective way of dealing with the crisis. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Roxin. It's indeed very important to keep an eye on these projects and programs, and to do such evaluation to enhance the way that we work, and also ensure that we learn from the experience that we have, and to better respond. Also, in regards to further focusing on short-term jobs, I think this is also crucial outcome of the evaluation that you've done. Thank you very much. My last input from the floor today will be Ms. Marta Lorenzo, Director of UNRWA Affairs in Jordan. She will be talking on behalf of the UN Under Secretary General and UNRWA Commissioner General Philip Lazzarini. Ms. Lorenzo, are you, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You are. Please,
yes.
Go ahead. It's yours.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Greetings from Jordan. I am the UNRWA Director joining you today from Jordan. I wanted to maybe highlight the specific situation of 45,000 Palestine refugees from Syria, both in Lebanon and Jordan. 17,800 are here in Jordan and another 27,000 in Lebanon. Of course, they are eligible to UNRWA. I also wanted to use this opportunity to thank all speakers for acknowledging the vital role of national governments in supporting refugees, not just over the Syria crisis, but over decades. As you know, UNRWA works in full partnership with national governments. We have been providing to Palestine refugees from Syria with access to education, medical care, relief, and protection. But the majority of them, what we have learned is that they rely exclusively on UNRWA to help them meet their basic needs. Just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, here in Jordan, we provide regular cash assistance, which is in the value of $25 to $40 per month. And sometimes, as we did last year, we were able to provide emergency cash support in response to the COVID pandemic. However, we know that UNRWA's assistance is short-term and pretty unpredictable because we rely entirely on our emergency appeal. When it comes to support to Palestine refugees from Syria to enter the labor market, we support them with education programs and technical and vocational training. Here in Jordan, we run 2 vocational training centers and a teacher's college. But while we would like to help Palestine refugees from Syria move towards self-reliance, something that I have heard from many of the speakers today, this is very difficult to achieve due to their level of vulnerability and in some cases their legal status. This limits the ability of Palestine refugees from Syria access training opportunities, benefit from small credits, and find jobs. Just to give you an example, having a steady source of income is usually a basis for granting loans by microfinance institutions, and documentation is often required to access technical training. We have heard today very good stories, and I was very impressed hearing from the story of Turkey, of how we move people from the informality to the formal market. But recognizing the specificity of Palestine refugees from Syria, my question to all of us, and of course, given the limitations of time, I don't expect any answer, but rather than a collective reflection, how can we collectively address some of the structural barriers and support Palestine refugees from Syria to jobs in Jordan and Lebanon in a context of already strained labor markets? We know, and we have heard from His Excellency, the Minister of Planning in Jordan, how scarce job opportunities are, are and the pressure that this is putting in a government like Jordan. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Ms. Marta, thank you very much. 40,000 Palestinian refugees from Syria. This is a huge number. It adds to the burden already on neighboring countries. You said that you're not expecting any answer. Let us try to at least address this topic. I think Dr. Ruba Jaradat, she would like to respond. Dr. Jaradat?
Yes, thank you, Firas. Well, in the interest of time, my quick response to Martha's question is simply that, while we encourage host countries to address structural barriers, we recognize the pre-existing challenges those countries face. Thus, we believe that the big responsibility lies on the shoulders of the international community to provide livelihood support to the refugees. And Firas, please, while I have the floor, please allow me to thank again our panelists for their valuable participation in this event. Start with Amal and Ali for their important feedback and voices from the field. I would like also to thank our very generous donors, BMZ, Dr. Elke Nobel, and Netherlands, Ms. Brigitta Tazelaar. Also, I'd like to thank Ted Shaiban, the RD of our sister agency, Unicef. Also, Ahmed Yagmur, the Turkey project coordinator. His Excellency Minister Nasser Shraide, our valuable government counterpart, who I warmly thank for his continued support. Thank you, Your Excellency. And Dr. Helge Roxen from the German Institute for Development Evaluation. I also thank participants, all the participants, for their important questions and active participation in our events. Over to you, Firas.
Dr. Jaradat, thank you very much. I think because we are running out of time, and I know that there's still a day that we have to commit to and work that needs to be done, I would like to close this panel today. Again, Dr. Jaradat, you mentioned all the names. Thank you all very much for your valuable input and participation. In addition to that, I would also like to thank Natalie, Mirna, Selwa, and Hassan for their all the support that they have provided, being there to make this event a success. Thank you all very much. I wish you a very pleasant rest of the day, and hope to see you all soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. شكرا معالي الوزير.
Thank you. Shukran. Bye-bye to everybody.